welcome back to DFC Books.
And welcome to a very, very deep dive today. We're getting into one of Charles Dickens's absolute masterpieces, Great Expectations.
That's right. Our source material today is, well, the entire novel. We're going to be covering the whole sweep of Pip's life, from those freezing marshlands all the way to Sodus House and the moral maze of London.
And our goal here isn't just to give you a plot summary, not at all.
No. We want to cut right through all the complexity and get to the core of it. We are basically extracting the DNA of Dickens's genius, how he weaves together this huge secret tapestry of crime, ambition, and, profound emotional failure.
All centered on one boy's misguided journey to become a gentleman.
Exactly. So by the end of this, you will know exactly who Pip is, who Miss Havisham is, and crucially, how the terrifying figure of the convict, Magwitch, really dictated every single step of their fate.
It's a study in how artificial expectations, these great expectations, completely corrupt genuine human connection. We're going to track Pip's transformation, focusing on, the key character introductions and the chapter events that really pivot his destiny.
We'll see how Dickens uses coincidence, not as some cheap trick, but as a thematic hammer, to show just how connected and, frankly, morally compromised this whole fictional world really is.
Right. So let's get started.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting at the absolute beginning. We're in that desolate graveyard. We meet our protagonist, Philip Pirrip, or, as everyone knows him, Pip.
And even his name, right from chapter 1, it suggests this theme of self-invention that's, driven by his limitations.
How so?
Well, the source text is very specific about it. His name is a reduction. His infant tongue could make of the full name, Philip Pirrip, nothing longer or more explicit than Pip. So I called myself Pip and came to be called Pip.
So he defines himself from the very beginning.
Exactly, but he's constrained by his environment. And his environment is, well, it's brutal.
Oh, it is. His very first memories of his family are just deeply morbid. He's standing alone in this churchyard, looking at the gravestones of his parents and his 5 little brothers.
Dickens sets the tone immediately with this bleak, almost surreal, childish imagination. From the inscription for his mother, Georgiana, he draws this incredibly specific but totally made-up conclusion that she was freckled and sickly.
Right, and the 5 little brothers, their graves are just these small stone lozenges.
And he constructs this unforgettable image from that. He believes they had all been borne on their backs with their hands in their trousers pockets and had never lived.
Oh, wow. Its whole inner world is formed by this landscape of death and isolation.
And the living guardians he has, who we meet in chapter 2, they don't offer much warmth either.
No. There's Mrs. Jo Gargery, his sister. She's more than 20 years older than him, and she's built this great reputation for raising him by hand.
And we really have to linger on that phrase, by hand. It's such a cruel irony that Dickens uses. It sounds so nurturing, but the text immediately clarifies it's all about violence.
It means she hits him.
Constantly. She had a hard and heavy hand and was much in the habit of laying it upon her husband as well as upon me. Her main tool for this was a waxed-ended cane she called the tickler.
So Pip grows up understanding that care and authority are basically the same thing as physical fear.
And her whole housekeeping style is just as severe. She has these fits of temper she calls her rampages, and even the way she cuts bread and butter is described with a trenchant way.
It's not a home. It's more like a garrison run by a tyrant.
And this harshness really defines her husband, Joe Gargery, by contrast. Joe, the blacksmith, he's the emotional foil to all of this.
Pip sees him as a larger species of child and as no more than my equal. Their relationship is the novel's first truly genuine bond, isn't it?
It is. It's built on their shared victimhood and this silent, immediate understanding.
That secret signal they have. Joe crossing his 2 forefingers to warn Pip that Mrs. Joe was in a cross temper. It's just heartbreaking.
It's their silent survival mechanism. It tells you everything you need to know about Pip's foundations. They're not built on love, but on these secret alliances against a shared tyrant.
And this fragile, fearful stability is just instantly shattered in chapter 1. The meeting with the convict.
Key event 1. It's one of the most famous openings in all of English literature.
It really is. Pip's in the churchyard, and this terrified, desperate man just jumps up, seizes him, and demands his name. The whole encounter is so primal.
And the convict's reaction is just pure threat and desperation. He's shaking, he's dressed in this coarse gray cloth, and he demands 2 things: food, or victuals, and a file.
with the threat of cutting Pip's throat if he doesn't comply.
Pip is left just trembling, sitting on a high tombstone,
Oh.
watching this man eat bread ravenously. He feels like the world has truly gone head over heels before him.
And this event immediately gives Pip a double secret burden, which we see in chapters 2 and 3. He decides he has to steal the provisions for his dreadful acquaintance.
And the genius here is how Dickens makes the guilt both psychological and physical.
Right. The mental burden is the intense guilt of stealing from the very people who feed him, abusive or not. But the physical burden is the actual stolen bread and butter he has to hide down the leg of his trousers.
So his shame is literally part of his clothing, which is a theme that comes back later with his coarse hands and thick boots.
Exactly. It's a precursor.
And all this internal anxiety just explodes during that disastrous Christmas dinner in chapter 4.
Key event 3.
Yeah.
And Dickens uses this scene to introduce all the village critics who are constantly reminding Pip of his low station in life.
Yes. First up is Mr. Pumblechook, Joe's uncle, the corn chandler.
Pumblechook is the embodiment of self-satisfied, pompous moralizing. He immediately takes this bullying tone, telling Pip to be grateful, boy, to them, which brought you up by hand. He just uses Pip as a platform for his own false piety.
And next to him is Mr. Wopsle, the parish clerk.
Ah, Mr. Wopsle. He fancies himself a great orator, always critiquing the sermons and rehearsing his own dramatic readings. He's known for punishing the amens tremendously. They're just this perfect little tableau of small-town hypocrisy.
And it's Pumblechook who becomes the unwitting victim of Pip's crime. Pip had secretly swapped Mrs. Joe's brandy for tar.
And the results when Pumblechook drinks it are, well, they're immediate and humiliating.
Dickens describes it with this sort of horrific comedy. Pumblechook springs up, turns around several times in an appalling, spasmodic whooping cough dance before just rushing out the door.
And just at that moment, the absolute moment, Pip's theft is about to be discovered.
The military arrives, you hear the drum and fife, they're chasing escaped convicts. The narrative tension is just perfect.
This leads straight into key event 4 in chapter 5. Joe, Pip, and Mr. Wopsle join the soldiers out on the marshes.
And they find two convicts struggling fiercely. This is so crucial for setting up the main antagonist for the rest of the book.
They're wrestling like wild animals. It's Pip's convict Magwitch struggling with another man, who we later find out is complacent.
Right. And when he's captured, Magwitch makes this very important statement. He insists he took him and give him up, talking about Compayson. He emphasizes that Compayson is a gentleman, if you please, this villain.
So the class conflict is there from the very beginning, even in the criminal world.
Absolutely. And then Magwitch sees Pip, and he performs his first silent act of protection.
He takes the blame for the stolen food.
He does. When they asked about the stolen pie and liquor, he claims he broke into the blacksmith house and stole it all himself. He shields Pip completely and gives him this look that Pip doesn't understand at all. It's a mixture of gratitude and finality.
Magwitch is taken back to the Hulk, the prison ship. But his influence on Pip's life doesn't end there, does it?
Not by a long shot. In chapter 7, Mrs. Joe announces that Pip is to go and play at Miss Havisham's, an arrangement made by Pumblechook.
And then in chapter 10, the convict's influence is confirmed in the most chilling way.
Key event 6. A stranger at the Jolly Bargeman pub gives Pip 2 new 1-pound notes. But the really unsettling detail is his drink stirrer.
He uses the old convict's file, the very one Pip stole.
It's a deliberate, silent message. Someone knows Pip's secret, someone connected to that convict world, and they are extending their reach into his life. The money immediately becomes a nightmare for Pip.
It's a dirty secret. It connects him back to the marshes.
And it shows us, the reader, that the criminal world and Pip's supposedly respectable life are already completely intertwined.
So now Pip's world shifts entirely. He enters the bizarre realm of Sada's house.
Which, ironically, translates to enough house. And the description in Chapter 8, Key Event 7, is just a masterpiece of decay.
The overwhelming impression is one of static time. Everything is frozen, ruined.
Everything that ought to be white is faded and yellow and has lost its luster. But the key detail, of course, is the stop time.
The clock in the hall and Miss Havisham's own watch are both stopped at exactly 20 minutes to 9.
That's the moment her life stopped. And she forces everyone around her to live in that same eternal pause.
And Miss Havisham herself is the source of all this decay. She's wearing a withered bridal dress.
And she has withered like the dress and had no brightness left but the brightness of her sunken eyes. She lives in permanent candlelight, telling Pip she hasn't seen the sun since you were born. She's a living ghost, really, preserved by her own bitterness.
And she's raising a weapon. That weapon is Estella.
Estella is immediately described as very pretty and seemed very proud. She's the delivery system for all of Miss Havisham's revenge.
When Estella asks what games Pip plays, he says, "Nothing but beggar my neighbor, miss."
And Miss Havisham's reply is just chilling. Beggar him. It's an instruction for emotional violence.
And Estella follows through immediately. She judges him as a common laboring boy, pointing out his coarse hands and his thick boots.
That moment is the definitive pivot point of the whole novel. Pip, who had only ever been ashamed of Mrs. Joe, is now ashamed of himself.
He's so miserable he starts to cry, and the text notes it's inwardly.
Yeah.
And that is the sharpest crying of all.
This is the birth of his great ambition, and it's an ambition rooted in shame, not in aspiration.
That's a great point. He doesn't want to better himself. He wants to erase himself. He wants to become someone Estella won't look down on.
It's a profoundly destructive motivation. And that internal shame is the fuel for everything that follows.
In Chapter 11, Pip returns, and he meets the rest of the parasites, I guess, feeding off this ruin.
A good word for them. Key Event 11 introduces the avaricious relatives. Camilla, Sarah Pocket, and Georgiana.
They are the very definition of hypocritical greed, aren't they? They all cluster around Miss Havisham, faking devotion, but clearly just obsessed with her death and their inheritance.
Oh, completely. Camilla, with her nervous chokings and nervous jerkings, theatrically complains about how much she thinks of Miss Havisham, more in the night than I am quite equal to. Dickens makes their greed utterly transparent.
And Pip also meets the gloomy lawyer, Mr. Jaggers, for the first time. He notes his sharp, imposing presence, a feature of absolute authority.
And moral darkness. But before that, there's Key Event 12, the very bizarre physical encounter with the pale young gentleman.
Fight in the brewery yard.
It's crucial not because Pip wins, but because of his reaction to winning. He wins easily, but the pale young gentleman, who we later learn is Herbert Pocket, shows this incredible plucky spirit. He just keeps getting up after being knocked down.
And Pip feels only a gloomy satisfaction in my victory.
Right. He already recognizes the moral superiority of the boy he just beat up. He sees himself as a savage young wolf. The common boy is still violent, even when he wins.
The clock keeps ticking toward the end of his common life. In Chapter 13, Pip is formally bound as Joe's apprentice.
And Pip views this ceremony at Setta's house with just excruciating embarrassment. He is acutely ashamed of Joe's uncomfortable formality and his deep country accent.
He feels like Joe is a spectacle.
Unjustly, yes. And when Miss Havisham gives Joe 25 pounds, it's a ceremonial severance. She's paying off the blacksmith for the time her practice dummy spent at the house. Pip is free, but he's free to be ashamed.
Which builds to the full weight of that shame in Chapter 17. He finally confesses his misery to Joe.
And that confession is so painful because it reveals how completely Estella's scorn has rewired his internal compass. He tells Joe he wishes his boots weren't so thick and his hands so coarse because Estella called him common.
Joe reassures him with his genuine, simple love, but it's too late.
It's too late. Pip is determined to leave his common life behind.
And that desire leads him to Biddy, who is the complete counter-character to Estella.
She really is. She starts as a drudge, but she gradually improves her appearance. Her shoes came up at the heel, her hair grew bright and neat. She represents genuine self-improvement based on internal virtue.
But Pip's new class-conscious perspective just contaminates even that pure relationship.
It does. He wants Biddy to educate him, not just for himself, but so he can make Joe less ignorant in common. And when Biddy asks him why he needs to leave if he's happy and loved, Pip immediately judges her.
He sees her wisdom as a bad side of human nature.
A tragic irony. The moment he decides he's too good for his life, he loses the ability to recognize true goodness in anyone else.
4 years later, Chapter 18. Pip is still at the forge. He's utterly miserable. And then comes Key Event 18, the hammer blow that shatters his entire destiny.
Mr. Jaggers arrives at the Jolly Bargeman.
He arrives like fate itself. Pip recognizes the lawyer instantly. Large head, his dark complexion, his deep-set eyes, his bushy black eyebrows, and that contemptuous look.
He drops the bomb. Pitt has great expectations.
Jaggers is very clear that he's just the messenger, right? He says he's not a fortune teller.
Precisely. Pip is to be immediately removed from the forge and educated as a gentleman in London. But the conditions attached are, well, they're immediately toxic.
The secrecy condition is paramount. Pip has to keep the name of his benefactor wholly secret. He's forbidden to even ask why.
And this condition immediately solidifies Pip's delusion. Since the money comes through Jaggers, who he met at Satis' house, he's convinced it must be from Miss Havisham.
Which means it's all about Estella.
In his mind, yes. This delusion is fatal to both his fortune and his character, and you see the immediate consequences in his farewells.
Joe is heartbroken but supports him. Pip's a gentleman of fortune then, and God bless him in it.
But Pip only feels this profound ingratitude and snobbery. He looks down on his mean little room and even the stars above the rustic objects of his home.
And Biddy, who is always insightful, she asks him if he'll still visit Joe.
And Pip dismisses her question as impertinent, a sign of her bad side. He sees her concern not as love, but as interference. He is already lost to his new status.
So Pip arrives in London in chapter 21, and Dickens immediately introduces the bizarre professional arm of the criminal world.
Key event 21, the introduction of Wemmick, Jaggers' clerk.
Wemmick has such a specific, almost armored look, a block of a face, with small, keen black eyes.
And he's perpetually in mourning. He wears at least 4 mourning rings and a brooch representing a lady and a weeping willow at a tomb with an urn on it.
This is his office persona. He's this mechanical, emotionless creature of habit, defined entirely by Jaggers' amoral firm.
And Pip is sent to live at Barnard's Inn, which he initially thinks is going to be this grand establishment.
But it's a dingiest collection of shabby buildings ever squeezed together. His great expectations are immediately met with grime.
And then, the extraordinary coincidence in chapter 22, he meets his new roommate.
And it's the pale young gentleman he fought years earlier, Herbert Pocket.
They both just burst out laughing at the realization it's an unexpected moment of genuine, uncomplicated friendship.
And Herbert immediately gives Pip the nickname Handel, linking him to the composer of the Harmonious Blacksmith.
It's a kind, gentle reminder of his past, but one Pip can tolerate because it's wrapped in this gentlemanly nickname.
Herbert becomes his confidant, and he fills in the blanks on the whole Havisham tragedy. He confirms Miss Havisham sent for him on a trial visit to see if she could, arrange a match with Estella.
But she couldn't take a fancy to him. And then he pieces together the whole story. Her rich father marrying his cook, the resentful half-brother, the charming swindler who conspired with the brother.
And deserted her on her wedding day, which is why the clock is stopped at 20 minutes to 9.
Exactly. This context is so vital. Miss Havisham isn't just mad by nature. She's mad by trauma and heartbreak. Her decay is a self-inflicted punishment.
A revenge against the entire male sex.
Precisely.
Moving on, in chapter 23, Pip meets Mr. Matthew Pocket, Herbert's father, and his appointed tutor.
And Matthew Pocket is the one relative who tried to warn Miss Havisham about the swindler, which is why he was cut out of her inner circle. He's the only one with integrity.
But his home life is just chaos. He's the picture of domestic bewilderment, constantly trying to lift himself up by his disturbed hair when things go wrong.
It's hilarious. Pip witnesses this domestic anarchy. Mrs. Pocket was raised only to marry a title, so she's perfectly helpless and useless. She's always distracted by a book on titles while her many children are constantly tripping over her footstool.
Dickens uses this family to show that wealth and good intentions don't guarantee competence.
Not at all. The source notes that the nurture of the little Pygets consisted of alternately tumbling up and lying down. It's high comedy built on utter uselessness.
But the real contrast to this anarchy comes in chapter 25, when Pip is introduced to Wemmick's dual life.
Key event 25. He visits Wemmick at his castle in Walworth.
And it's a brilliant structural technique. At the office in Little Britain, Wemmick is cold, mechanical, all business.
But at Walworth, he's warm, playful, completely different. His home is this little fortress of eccentricity.
It's got a moat, a drawbridge, a battery with a cannon called the Stinger.
And his hard-of-hearing father, the aged parent. Wemmick's whole philosophy is revealed through this architecture. He keeps his personal, portable property, his happiness, his kindness, safe and separate from the cold, moral darkness of his professional world.
So to survive Jaggers' world, he needs this impermeable emotional wall.
He does. He leaves the office looking as unconscious of his Walworth property as if the entire castle had all been blown into space.
Finally, in chapter 26, Pip dines at Jaggers' private house in Gerrard Street, which is a much darker scene. He meets his fellow students, including Bentley Drummle.
Drummle is instantly repulsive, a sulky kind of fellow. But Jaggers describes him as one of the true sort, meaning Jaggers sees a potential for ruthlessness in him that he admires.
Pip immediately dislikes him and nicknames him the Spider.
And then there's Molly, the mysterious housekeeper.
She is so unsettling. She's about 40, extremely pale, large, faded eyes, and this quantity of streaming hair. Pip describes her face as looking all disturbed by fiery air like the faces I had seen rise out of the witch's cauldron.
And Jaggers immediately uses her as a demonstration of his total control. He makes her show her extremely strong wrists to the company, hinting at a hidden, violent past.
She begs him not to, but he insists.
He's establishing his command over this tamed woman, using her history as a tool of intimidation, just like he uses his courtroom techniques.
This next section really marks the height of Pip's ambition, but also the beginning of his moral downfall. And it starts with maybe the most emotionally painful chapter in the entire novel.
Chapter 27. Key Event 27. Joe visits Pip in London.
It's devastating. This is Pip's snobbery hitting its absolute zenith. He is just utterly mortified by Joe's presence.
He's ashamed of Joe's clothes, the high shirt collar that makes his hair stand up like a tuft of feathers, his awkward mannerisms, his country speech. He's constantly calling Pip, "Sir?"
And Pip feels impatient of him and out of temper with him.
The irony is just crushing. Joe is the only person who has ever truly loved Pip unconditionally, and Pip treats him like an embarrassing inconvenience.
Joe sees it too. He perceives the social gulf that Pip has deliberately created, and he decides to leave early. He says he won't run contrary to Pip's new opinions.
And Joe's departure is the deepest possible expression of kindness and sacrifice. He sees that his presence is humiliating Pip, so he removes himself to protect Pip's new status while breaking his own heart in the process.
It's the moral low point Pip has to redeem himself from by the end of the novel.
It is. But the specter of the marshes and his real benefactor, it refuses to be ignored. In Chapter 28, Pip is on a coach heading back toward his hometown.
And he's sitting behind a convict.
Right. And this convict gives money, 2 one-pound notes, to another passenger. And he recounts how he was given them by a mate years ago. Pip immediately recognizes them as the exact notes given to him at the Jolly Bargeman.
By the stranger with the file.
It's a chain of evidence, a breadcrumb trail of guilt and obligation that's been following him for years, no matter how high he climbs.
Then Pip visits Miss Havisham again in Chapter 29. He finds Estella is even more beautiful, but still just as proud and insulting.
And this is the visit where Estella explicitly states her nature. She tells Pip she has no heart. She warns him, "If we are to be thrown much together, you had better believe it at once."
But his devotion is hopeless, incurable. He can't escape the trauma Miss Havisham inflicted on him through her.
No, he can't.
We'll skip ahead a bit to the consequences of his ambition. Chapter 35. Mrs. Joe dies. She'd been brutally attacked earlier by an unknown assailant who we later learned was Orlick.
Right. And Pip returns for the funeral, which is just another platform for Pumblechook's grotesque hypocrisy. He does this whole self-congratulatory performance, telling Pip he wished his sister could have known Pip had done her so much honor.
In Chapter 36, Pip comes of age. Jaggers gives him a fixed annuity, but maintains that ironclad secrecy rule about his benefactor.
And this new money leads to a crucial conversation about friendship and finance. Pip asks Wemmick about investing portable property in a friend.
And Wemmick, in his office persona, gives the most cynical advice possible.
He does. A man should never invest portable property in a friend. Certainly he should not, unless he wants to get rid of the friend. But then he immediately tips Pip off to his other self, suggesting he visit him at Walworth.
And Pip takes the Walworth advice. In the next chapter, Key Event 37, he secretly secures Herbert's financial future. He uses half of his new inheritance to fund a partnership for him.
All without Herbert's knowledge. This is Pip's true moral ascent. It's the first truly unselfish act of his adult life, driven by that Walworth sentiment of protecting a friend.
It's a moment of profound relief from the debt-ridden, snobbish life he'd been leading.
It is, but the shadow is about to become reality.
Chapter 39. Key Event 39. The actual terrifying climax of his expectations. Magwitch returns.
On a stormy night, he shows up at Pip's rooms in London. The arrival is violent, shocking, and profoundly unwelcome.
Magwitch is soaking wet, rough, and immediately recognizable from the marshes, and Pip is just repulsed.
And Magwitch wastes no time. He grabs Pip's hands and delivers that unforgettable revelation. "Yes, Pip, dear boy, I've made a gentleman on you. It's me what has done it."
And this just demolishes Pip's entire self-conception. His delusion that he was Miss Havisham's protege, that he was destined for Estella, it all just shatters.
The irony is grotesque. Magwitch loaded Pip with wretched gold and silver chains for years, turning Pip into the very thing he desired, but funded by the very thing he hated, a common, violent convict.
And there's the immediate terrifying danger. Magwitch was transported for life.
It's a death sentence to return to England. He confirms he would, of a certainty, be hanged if took. Pip is horrified, not just by the source of his money, but by the fact that he now holds this man's life in his hand.
He's gone from ambitious gentleman to accessory to a felon.
In an instant.
So this discovery forces Pip to finally shed his secrecy. In chapter 41, he tells Herbert the entire truth, including his physical aversion to Magwitch.
And they both share that feeling of repugnance, but they vow to help Magwitch escape. This leads to the detailed criminal history of the novel in chapter 42.
Magwitch's life story.
He recounts his whole life. A poor child, constantly took up, growing up hardened, living in and out of jails. Dickens is sketching the societal cost of poverty.
And then he introduces Compeyson, the man he fought on the marshes. Compeyson set up for a gentleman, had learning, and was a smooth one to talk.
Magwitch was just a poor tool in his hands, constantly in debt and danger, always overmatched by Compeyson's craft.
And the ultimate injustice happened during their joint trial. Compeyson, dressed like a gentleman, emphasized Magwitch's low appearance and got a lighter sentence.
Right, and Magwitch's rage at that injustice, the class prejudice baked into the legal system, that's the driving force behind his lifelong devotion to making Pip a gentleman. His motivation is revenge against the system, channeled through Pip.
This is where the structural genius of Dickens really comes into play. The hidden connections. Pip starts synthesizing all these discrete pieces of information to uncover the ultimate secret.
We connect the dots in chapter 48. First, you have Wemmick's private information about Molly, Jagger's housekeeper.
Right. Wemmick reveals Molly was once on trial for strangling a woman in a jealous rage after losing her child. Jagger's got her acquitted.
Then you have Magwitch's story. He mentions his missus, a foul shrew who swore to destroy their child, a girl telling him he would never see it again.
And the timeline matches. A missing child, a woman with a violent past, and Jagger's securing her freedom.
The implication, which Pip pieces together, is that Estella is the lost daughter of Magwitch and Molly. Jaggers defended Molly, took the daughter, and placed her with Miss Havisham to be raised as this cruel weapon.
It's an incredible web. Every main character is connected by this single thread of crime, tragedy, and adoption.
It's masterful.
So while dealing with this monstrous discovery, that his beloved Estella is the daughter of a murderer and a condemned convict, Pip goes to Satis' house in chapter 44. He confronts Miss Havisham.
She confirms the betrayal. She admits she let him go on in his mistake. And she sees his genuine pain. He's not suffering for the loss of the money, but for his wasted emotional devotion. And she shows the first sincere flicker of remorse.
And then Estella delivers the fatal choice. She announces she's going to marry Bentley Drummle, Pip's hated rival.
Pip begs her not to, calling Drummle a mean brute, such a stupid brute. And Estella's reply is just ice cold. Don't be afraid of my being a blessing to him. I shall not be that.
She marries him knowing she'll make him miserable and that she'll be miserable herself. Her fate is just to inflict pain.
She remains utterly unmoved, confirming she has no heart.
Then comes key event 49, Miss Havisham's dramatic reckoning. Pip visits her again.
And in a fit of overwhelming remorse, she kneels before him, crying, "What have I done?" She begs Pip to write, "I forgive her," beside her name. She finally acknowledges her profound cruelty.
And moments later, her withered bridal dress catches fire near the fireplace.
Pip sacrifices himself to save her, getting severe burns on his hands and arms. He sacrifices his own flesh to save the architect of his misery, finally achieving a kind of moral purity through pain and forgiveness.
Miss Havisham doesn't survive, but her spiritual redemption is tied to this moment of fire and forgiveness.
It is, and the danger around Magwitch becomes acute right after the fire.
Key event 45. Pip gets a cryptic, handwritten warning from Wemmick, "Don't go home." Compeyson is in London, and Pip's rooms are being watched.
And key event 47 confirms this dramatically. Mr. Wopsle, now an actor, tells Pip he saw a man sitting directly behind him at the theater, watching him like a ghost.
It was Compeyson. The noose is tightening.
The dramatic tension culminates in chapter 53. Pip is lured to the sluice house near the lime kiln with a fake note. He walks right into an ambush by Orlick.
Orlick, the journeyman blacksmith who has always hated Pip, ties him up in a running noose.
And this is where the dark secrets of the marshes finally converge. Orlick confesses to murdering Mrs. Joe. He struck her down with a convict's-filed leg iron which he found on the marshes.
The very file Pip stole years ago.
The file is the ultimate symbol of Dickens's interconnected structure. Pip's childhood crime directly facilitates the attack on his own sister.
And Orlick says he's going to put Pip's body in the kiln to destroy all the evidence.
He's saved just in time by Herbert, who had read Pip's dropped note and followed him.
Herbert, the friend whose prospects Pip had once despised, saves his life.
A significant reversal. This leads to the final, desperate effort in Key Event 54, the attempted escape. They try to smuggle Magwitch down the River Thames onto a foreign steamer.
But they're intercepted by a Customs galley, led by Compeyson.
During the struggle, the boats collide, Compeyson drowns, and Magwitch is severely injured and captured.
And Key Event 56 is the final act of devotion. Pip's moral redemption. Magwitch is convicted and sentenced to death.
But Pip, having abandoned all his shame and revulsion, remains devoted. He holds Magwitch's hand at the bar. His initial repugnance has all melted away, replaced by affection and gratitude.
Magwitch is dying in the infirmary, and just before his death, Pip whispers the final truth to him, that his daughter Estella is alive and beautiful.
It's Pip's ultimate gift to his patron. Magwitch dies, and Pip has finally traded social aspirations for genuine human connection and moral responsibility.
Then comes the aftermath, Chapter 57. Pip is overwhelmed by fever and immense debt, and he's nursed back to health by Joe.
Joe pays off all of Pip's debts, showing the true, immeasurable wealth of his own character.
But when Pip recovers, the social awkwardness returns. Joe starts calling him sir again and leaves early. Pip's attempt to become a gentleman reinforced that social distance, and it's still there.
It has reinforced the emotional wall that Pip himself built.
Which leads us to the famous ambiguity of the two endings. Pip, recovered and resolved to work for a living, goes back to the forge to ask Biddy to marry him.
Hoping to finally secure some genuine happiness. But before he gets there, he runs into Pumblechook, who now treats him with this magnificent pity, condemning his prodigality.
A complete reversal from the flattery he showed before.
Of course. And Pip arrives at the forge to find Biddy and Joe arm in arm. She has just married Joe.
He's missed his chance for that genuine, selfless happiness.
He has, and he humbly asks for their forgiveness, which they grant completely. Joe and Biddy are the moral center of this universe.
Now, the endings. Dickens originally wrote a lonelier, sadder ending, which he abandoned on advice from his friend Bulwer Lytton.
In the original, Pip meets Estella 2 years later in London. She's miserably separated from Drummle, who died, and has remarried a Shropshire doctor. They just exchange sad, final farewells.
But the final revised ending, the one most people know, is a bit happier.
It is. Pip meets Estella years later in the ruined garden of Satis House. She has suffered greatly, and she confirms that misfortune has been the making of me, suggesting she has finally gained a heart.
And they part with the narrator concluding, I saw no shadow of another parting from her.
It suggests they will finally remain together, or at least that Pip will hold on to the peace she brings him. It's much more hopeful.
The brilliance of this novel is how Dickens structures this entire journey as an incredible machine of coincidence. Every character, Magwitch, Molly, Compeyson, Miss Havisham, Estella, Jaggers, they're all interconnected through crime, shame, and misplaced love.
And that web isn't arbitrary. It's designed to show that in a small, cruel world, everyone's fate is bound to everyone else's.
The core lesson Dickens imparts here is profound, isn't it? Pip's great expectations, which he sought through snobbery and shame, only brought him misery and debt.
His true wealth, his true gentleman status, was always within his reach. It was represented by the genuine connection he abandoned in Joe and Biddy. The novel is this vast, compelling argument for virtue over status.
And this raises the provocative question for you, the listener, as you reflect on this journey. Did Dickens make the right choice in revising that ending? Does the traditional, slightly happier ending truly enhance the story, reflecting Pip's hard-won redemption? Or does the original lonelier ending, where Pip is left alone with the consequences of his ambition, better reflect the inevitable price of his years of snobbery?
Did Pip truly earn Estella, or did he merely learn to stop being common? It's something to ponder as you reflect on the deep, tangled history of Philip Pirrip.